Hello, welcome to RC Video Reviews. Today I have a build review in maiden flight for the Tron 5.5 helicopter. Before I get into the review, I just want to make sure I say thanks to Frank at Fatboy Helicopters. He made me a nice deal on this Tron 5.5. He's got the entire kit and all the electronics you need to get this thing up in the air, and he really does seem to take an interest in helping pilots get flying. So if you're in the market for a 550 class helicopter, make sure you check out Fatboy Helicopters. They carry the Tron line and a whole bunch of cool electronics to go with it. All right, let's get into the review. I'm using a Hobbywing Platinum 120 amp ESC and an Xnova 4020 1200 kV. That's running on 6S, 1200 kV. That blows me away. If you're a fixed wing guy, that sounds ludicrous to you. 1200 kV on 6S, it just sounds nuts. This motor is illegal in 17 states due to the power it makes. No, I'm just kidding. But it is a weapon, man. That's a big hunk of motor right there, that's for sure. I'm using Fatboy servos. These are FS0391 HVs for the cyclic. And on the tail, I'm using the FS0391 tail servo HV. You can see I've got a Radiomaster R161 receiver that is running in F-port inverted mode so I can get telemetry to my Icon flight controller. I'm using the Icon V2. For those of you who ask about Bluetooth modules, I haven't used the Bluetooth version of this yet. I'm sure it works fine, but I've been using the integration via Lua. So I can make changes to my Icon V2 when I'm at the field. I do it via Lua script, and the changes go out via the radio link, and it works just fine. Notice I've got the capacitor that came, I think it came with the ESC, I'm not sure, but I plugged that into the Icon. And then on top, I want to point out the rotor head, all metal up here, very nice fit and finish. I can tell you that the blade grips up here are metal. They ride on their bearings on the feathering shaft just beautifully. The only plastic pieces up here are the ball link connectors. Other than that, everything up top is metal. Follower arms are awesome. The swash plate fit perfectly. I also got the swash plate leveling tool from Frank while I was at it, and that works on here just fine. So everything fits really nicely up front. Notice that you got very easy access to the servo arms if you have an unfortunate need to change those. And that's true for the servo on the starboard side and the port side over there. You can see it right there. There's a servo arm. And for the pitch servo, it's not too hard to get to it. You'll have to take the ball link off the swash plate and then pull the servo out, but just a couple screws and they're right there. On the lower part of the frame, there's a very nice quick release for the battery tray. You just pull that out and the battery tray slides forward. And then also notice it's got this two frame half kind of design. There's an upper half and a lower half. This is meant to be a mechanical fuse, I believe. That's not really in the documentation, but I believe that's what they were trying to accomplish, so that if you have an impact with the ground, this piece can break off without destroying the upper half. And that's where all your gear is connected. So it's a lot easier to change this piece than it would be to change that piece. And I think that's why they do that, but I'm not sure. For those of you who are eagle-eyed, you'll notice that I have an XT60 up front. It's not going to stay that way. I do have XT90s. I'll convert it. But for the Maiden, I'm just going to be hovering in the backyard, and I know those are good for about 200 amps, so I'm not too concerned about it. Up top, I've got the awesome Fatboy blades. These are 550 millimeter, and the white color goes really well with the color scheme. There's a canopy up on my monitor. You can see that. Orange, black, and white. So this color scheme goes really well together. And then on the back, notice there's this little secondary deck. I use that to store my wires, so I made a nice little wire loom, strapped everything down. I'm sure if you have other ideas, you can utilize that deck for other stuff, but it sure made wiring very simple. I just put all my excess down there, strapped it all down, and it made everything nice and tidy. Now regarding the tail boom, notice there are no supports. The only thing you've got is a push rod guide right here on the bottom half of the boom, and then the push rod just slides right there and through that guide all the way to the back. No issues. As far as the tail rotor goes, everything is metal back here, including the blade grips. I can tell you the blade grips ride really nice on that feathering shaft. The pitch control mechanism is all metal, and there's a carbon fiber fin back here to protect your tail rotor blades. On the port side of the helicopter, I mentioned that this thing has a pretty unique tensioning mechanism for the tail belt. So here's the belt right here, and then there's a screw right there and right there. And you release those, and with one hand you can tension the tail boom, and then with the other hand you tighten that screw back down. This is a direct drive layout. There's the pinion meshed up against the main gear, and there's the motor, of course. And then here's the cyclic servo on the port side, and you can see again that screw is really easy to get to if you need to make adjustments. Regarding fit and finish, everything went together just fine on this helicopter. I didn't have to make a single modification. So I got to give 2 thumbs up to Tron for their quality control. I think they've done an excellent job with this kit. The only real gripe I have is that they didn't machine in hex nuts on the bottom of the blade grip. So you have to put a wrench on there and the top when you're tightening those. A lot of other helicopters, they machine in a hex cutout on the bottom of the blade grip, so all you have to do is hold that nut in and then screw this down from the top. That's a nitpick. It's not really a fault. It's just something they could have done a little better, but that is what it is. All right, that wraps up my build review. Let's go fly it. All right, guys, here we go with the maiden flight of the Tron. I'm just going to lift it up, do basic control checks, hover it for a little bit and set it down, and then go in and check everything out and make sure everything works the way it's supposed to. So here we go with the first flight of the Tron 5.5. Okay, everything sounds good so far. Just doing basic control checks first, a little bit of pitch forward, pitch aft. I can see it. You probably won't on the camera, but I can see it. I'm gonna roll left, good, roll right, okay, good. And the rudder looks good. So I'm gonna lift it up into a hover now. And just clear ground effect. Taking a look at the tail for wag. That's one of the first things I've learned is you got to look at that tail. Make sure you don't see any unusual wag. I saw that on my Protos, on my first Maiden on the second flight of the Protos, and that cost me a crash. I do see a little bit of oscillation there. Might have to check that out in the logs when I'm done. Honestly, that gain feels a little too high. It feels a little jittery to me. I don't have a dynamic gain set up, so I'll have to make adjustments inside, but yeah, that feels a little high. It feels a little bouncy. That normally means, I think, is there's enough authority on that tail rotor that the gain doesn't need to be quite as high as it is. All right, well that wraps up my Maiden on the Tron 5.5 and the... All right, well that wraps up my build review and the Maiden on the Tron 5.5. I hope you guys liked the video, and if you do like this kind of content, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you know when new material hits the channel. That's all I've got for today. Take it easy. Hey, if you like the work I do here on RC Video Reviews, please consider joining me on Patreon. For about the price of a cup of coffee, you can help me keep making videos just like this one. If you'd like to help out, there's a link in the description and on your screen. I'll talk about belt tension in just a minute, but this helicopter has a really cool tensioning mechanism that I'll get to belt tension in just a minute, because this all metal on the tail rotor. This has got metal blade grips, metal components back here for the yoke